morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Climate Action Talk Series of UN University and GEOC. My name is Akio Takemoto. I'm Program Head at UNU Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, UNUIS. GEOC conducts a series of talks inviting experts on climate change from various fields across the world. Today, we are honored to invite Ms. Kelly King, a council member of Maui County of Hawaii. Ms. King is also a member of ICLEI, USA. ICLEI is a global network of local governments of sustainability. Thank you very much for joining us today online, Ms. King. So first, thank you so much for participating in our side event in Glasgow entitled Carbon Neutrality and SDGs during the COP26 in November last year. I hope you are safely back. So nowadays, as the pandemic is prevailed both in your country and in Japan, but hope that you stay safe. Thank you very much.
I'm safe and COVID-free so far, knock on wood.
Okay, yeah. So let's start the dialogue. Participated in a COP26, and I had a, I was so much impressed by the outcome of the COP26. Also impressed by a lot of side events and presentation provided by experts. So I'm curious about your reflections on the COP26. So floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that question, the opportunity to recap. It was quite an impressive event. I think I participated in over a dozen panel discussions and presentations, so I was quite busy for the whole 2 weeks. But I was impressed with how many of the U.S. country, how many of our officials came, and being able to hear John Kerry speak, being able to hear Barack Obama, our former president, speak, and also getting a very intimate small meeting with Gina McCarthy, who's our National White House Climate Advisor, was extremely helpful. I think there were 8 of us that were able to sit down with her. And that hands-on approach kind of permeated throughout the whole conference. I think the focus on the importance of local governments at the county and city levels was very impressive. And it felt like those weren't just words, that they're going to be acted upon. And there was a lot of reliance on input. Plus, I believe that there's a commitment from those of us at the ground level. And when I spoke at the U.S. Climate Action Center, there was one session called America is All In. Well, we all know that America is not all in, but those of us who are in are all in. And I think that's the point, is that those of us who are committed to climate action are all in, are committed, and we're committed to doing more than just our part. So that was kind of a theme running through the conference, was multi-level collaborating between different levels of government, and then also collaborating globally, city to city, county to county, and talking to other people at local government level to share ideas and to keep each other moving forward. Because some of us are from countries who exited the Paris Agreement. As you know, the US did the last 4 years. Brazil has actually been burning down their rainforest rather than protecting it. And so some of us are from countries where we haven't gotten the support at the federal level. And it's very important for us to support each other to continue doing what we need to do at the local level to move forward. And I felt that commitment there. I had several one-on-one meetings. One was a mayor from Brazil. So we talked about ideas and things that we were each doing in our counties, in our communities, to move forward the multimodal transportation. And I shared information about what we're doing with biodiesel, locally produced renewable fuels, the whole agriculture to energy model that fits into the circular economy. And it was a little bit almost like, the phrase singing to the choir. So you're there with people who believe the same thing you believe and understand. And that was one area that I felt there was a missed opportunity. There might have been an opportunity to bring in some of the Republicans, for instance, in the United States, who understand climate change, but they may not want to speak out in the venue of the U.S. Congress or the U.S. Senate. but maybe inviting them to an opportunity like this where they might be able to speak their truth and collaborate with people who understand the same thing might have brought some of those people out into the open to support the cause instead of staying kind of hidden in the shadows. So I felt like that was one of the few missed opportunities I think that that organization could have promoted.
Yeah, thank you so much for providing your reflections. So yes, now I'm reminded that there are a lot of talks and discussion during the COP26 and among different kinds of people. Then as an outcome of the COP, Paris rule book was finally created, and now it's a time to implement the agreement. So I was so impressed that various stakeholders groups, including your group, decided and announced to work together for promoting carbon neutrality and enhancing resilience against climate impact. Now, I think each player, each stakeholder has a significant role to contribute to the climate accord. So, yeah, so even for Republicans, so there is a huge opportunity for economic growth in U.S. and in the world. So I think we can have more opportunity to work together, not just for the people who favor it, but the people for against it. So yeah, I think it's a very, very important reflection for me. Thank you very much. So now I would like to listen to your idea on how you will promote climate actions in your home state, in a home island. You are, Hawaii is remote island states, and Japan is also island countries. So your experience and idea might be maybe very useful for us in Japan and other island countries. Thank you.
Okay, well, I know Japan is broken up into the prefectures, which are sort of the equivalent of states in the United States, and so it's important. It's important to work with among the states, but it's also important for the state level to work with the smaller municipalities who are going to be the implementers of some of these actions. And I think the biggest action that our state has taken, and we took it several years ago. It's almost been 7 years now since our current governor first became governor. He's in his second term now, and he actually supported a Hawaii initiative called the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative that stated in state statute. So it's the law now that we will be 100% renewable in our utility by the year 2045. So that's one thing we're working on. And Hawaii has stated a lot of goals. We haven't necessarily outlined how we're going to get there, but history has taught us that it takes stating the goal for the people on the ground to figure out how we're going to get there. For instance, we had the previous governor had created the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, which was a goal of 70% renewables by the year 2030. And people didn't want to support that because they said, we don't know how we're going to get there. But they got it in anyway. It was 70% reduction in fossil fuel, and 30% of that was going to be with conservation, just by conserving energy. So the fact that we put that into state statute made the electric utility and even other transportation companies start working on the issue to how we're going to get there. And we actually had a pathway. So that's when Governor Ige came along and he said, no, we're going to be 100% renewable by 2045. And the powers that be are starting to work towards it. So the utility says that they're on track now to meet that 2045 deadline. And the other things that we're doing, and the state has not really put together a plan for how to reach these goals. But just setting the goals is expecting the departments and the companies in the state of Hawaii, like the electric utility, to get there. So we've these are some of the commitments that we've made as a state. 100% net zero operating emissions in all government buildings by the year 2030. So that, we have 8 years to get there. 100% zero emissions for light duty public fleets by 2035. 100% zero emission public government owned transit bus fleets by 2030. And 100% zero emission medium and heavy duty public fleets by 2040. Where it's technically feasible. But they may not be 100% zero emissions, but there's going to have to be some flexibility in there for potential biofuel use, because we can keep it's so much easier. We can save a lot of money. We can keep the current infrastructure with biofuel. We can just change the fuel that's in the stations now. So that's a trade-off. Going electric is a trade-off because we have to create a whole new infrastructure. And then we have to have people who are used to dealing with really heavy duty diesel trucks start driving electric trucks, and they might not be able to go as far, and they might not be able to haul as much or go up hills. And so those are issues that have to be worked out in terms of equity and not burdening the companies that may not be able to afford to switch out their vehicles. Other goals that we have are to conserve at least 30% of land and coastal waters by 2030. Commit to large-scale restoration of forests and other locally indigenous ecosystems. So that's starting to happen. I'm starting to push some of this in Maui County through my Climate Action and Environment Committee. And we do have a wetland preservation bill that we're going to be hopefully passing this year. We passed the chemical sunscreen ban, which is the strongest sunscreen ban sunscreen law in the world. So now it's not just a list of chemicals, it's anything that's non-mineral will not be allowed in Maui County. And this is our commitment to biodiversity. We did sign the Edinburgh Declaration supporting biodiversity when we were in Scotland. We also have a commitment to increase the tree canopy in the disadvantaged or heat islands. So the areas that get the most heat, to increase the tree canopy by at least 40% by 2030. And then that's a way of mitigating in the urban areas some of these heat island effects without blasting air conditioners and having to use more energy to cool, to enclose areas and then cool them down. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit later about the increased consumption of locally produced food. So that's a goal also. The state health department publishes a greenhouse gas emissions every year. So they give an inventory statewide of CO2 emissions equivalents. And so we don't actually have a step-by-step plan. We have goals we want to get to, and then we're benchmarking how well we're doing. And this is also, what this does is it gives impetus to entrepreneurs to come up with the technologies needed to address these problems. So we've seen an increase in the ideas and the investments in some of these technologies with setting goals. And that's exciting because it also, if it's local ingenuity, it keeps the revenue local. And also the Hawaii has a state climate commission, which is also producing an annual report, and they're keeping track of the progress made towards these goals every year.
Great, thank you so much, Ms. Kim. They are all very, very attractive to listen. And yes, I'm reminded that you mentioned that sunscreen. It's very environment friendly. It's very nice, and
it's one of the chemical sunscreens. They're not only harmful to your body when you put them on. Some of them are very cancer causing, but they also attack invertebrates in the ocean, and they they deteriorate our reefs. So that's part of our first defense against erosion, right? Is having those reefs there to keep to lessen the impact of the waves that come in. And as we're seeing the reef deteriorate, we were bringing in experts to help talk about the effects of the sunscreen that hundreds of thousands of tourists, on a weekly basis jump in the water. And so we have we had a state person at one of the state beaches who would stand there every day with a 55-gallon barrel to show you how much of the sunscreen goes in on a daily basis just around that area.
Okay, so you can disseminate such environmental friendly sunscreen to other countries that will.
Right. And then
save
and that
some-
was part of the collaboration too, because we were working with the state. The county was working with the state. The state was in huge support. And now that we've passed the bill, the state is putting in next month they'll be putting in 4 mineral sunscreen dispensers. So these will be dispensers that the public can walk up to and just get a little shot of the mineral sunscreen that they should be using instead of the chemical sunscreen.
Great. Thank you.